Happy birthday, Dad. It's your number 3 son and your namesake. Well, as you probably know, all of your children have been asked to summon memories about you when they were little. And the very first word that pops into my head is the word fish. One of my earliest memories is of sitting in a high chair in that dining room nook, and there was a guppy tank, and I'm sure you installed it. And I remember watching those guppies, so bright and colorful, and they would duck in and out of the seaweed. It was like a little world, and I was mesmerized. And later on, when you built the addition, the kitchen addition, you installed 2 tanks. It was an engineering feat because you actually installed them in the wall, but rather than leaving it clear to the outside, you painted the outside walls black and actually cut silhouettes of fishes in the paint. It was very creative, fish on fish. And in the upper left-hand tank, I think was always goldfish. And in the right-hand tank, guppies and zebrafish and swordfish and mollies. And it gave me a love of nature. And later on, I raised guppies and other live-bearing fish, swordfish. I got them to have babies, and I even learned how to raise cichlids. They would carry their babies around in their mouth. So my love of fish is, I think, connected to you. Another early memory I have is of going to Dairy Queen. The ice cream was part of the memory, but getting there was the memory I'm thinking of. We would go to Dairy Queen in the back of a pickup. You took us via Depot Street. It was just a dirt road. In fact, it went back and forth over the tracks, and it was rutted and pitted, and the brush was cab high. It was like riding through a jungle. We got to ride in the back of the pickup, bounce up and down, and have a great old time on a warm summer evening. Having ice cream at the end was the good reward. It's sort of sad that that's illegal now, and kids can't do that. It was a delight. Speaking of bouncing up and down, I remember wheelbarrow rides that you used to give us. I remember being squished in with Brady, shoulder to shoulder, riding us around the yard, looking for the bumps, up and down, falling out and tipping us over. And I remember you mixing mortar in that wheelbarrow, seeing the mortar being squeezed through the holes of the hoe, teaching us that you needed to put the water in first into the wheelbarrow, and then the dry mortar didn't stick to the bottom, that there was water at the bottom as well as the top. And what about the airplane? That's another thing that I love that came from you. I have a memory of the huge airplane wall map in the breakfast room, you lounging in the wicker fish lounge with your feet in the air and telling us how important it was for the blood to go back to your brain, and showing us where we were on the map. It was from Chicago to New York, from Cleveland all the way down to Louisiana. I don't think Florida could fit on that. But the flying, I don't know how many trips we took. I just remember going to Florida and all 4 of us boys squeezing into the back of a 4-seater with our luggage. It was like a little greenhouse, hot and noisy. It was fun. Waiting at the end of the runway, the airplane was bucking, ready to go. You'd turn up the throttle and the plane would be rocking back and forth, ready to take off. You'd release the brakes and we'd go rolling, bouncing down the runway, and at some moment it would just lift off, and all of a sudden it was off in the air. See the ground disappear. It gave me appreciation of our planet. And so noisy, and barf bags in hand, and you talking a strange language. Niner Delta Foxtrot. It was better than any amusement ride we could ever go on. Or another time you took us up on a pre-Christmas night. The Christmas lights were all around in the town, and we would see Berea and its lights all lit up. They looked like little jewels. That was spectacular. And it made me want to be a pilot. And you even gave me flying lessons. I made it all the way to solo, and shortly thereafter I broke my legs and never really flew again. But I always wanted to be a pilot, and maybe I still can. So thank you for that. Another very early memory I have is of going to the parade. And of course, we lived on Grant Street, about a block away from Front Street, and we didn't have to go and wait for the parade because we could hear the band coming in. But the favorite part of that was riding on your shoulders. When I was young enough and it was my turn, you would hoist me on your shoulders and we would march down to the parade, past the Moleys and Catholic Church, go right to the corner, and I remember being on your shoulders, and it was the best view up above everybody else. And I particularly remember cupping my hands and having your chin in my hands and feeling your scratchy beard. And you would rub your beard on my skin of my legs there in my shorts, and you put me in the king's seat. Another memory I have is learning how to answer the front door. You would come to the door, ring the bell. Of course, we were all primed for this, and you would come to the door and introduce yourself as Mr. Ginkelfitch. And one by one, we would have to take our turn, welcome you to our home, and introduce you to all of our brothers. And this is my mother, Mary Jean. Won't you come in and learn our manners? And thank you for that one. It served me well. And what about the Christmas card production line? Every year, the McCosco family would put out a Christmas card. You did the artwork, Dad, and Mom would do the writing, I think. Together you would create these cards. And our role was to fold everything and put them in envelopes and address them and lick the stamps. There was so many cards, and some cards had 4 or 5 folds in them, so folding was endless. When we were little, we got the easy job, licking the envelopes and licking the stamps and putting on the envelopes. But we would graduate to folding, and that was an endless task. When we got older, we graduated to addressing the cards or licking the addresses to the cards and alphabetizing them, and turn someone sideways, because those individually, there used to be a note that had to go on them. And speaking of production lines, how about the Sunday newspaper assembly line? I think all 4 of us had a hand in that. The advertising section, the funnies, the sports section, the Metro, the front page, and we'd all be lined up with our piles and shifting them from one to the other. Boom, boom, boom. Bang, slap the front page down. We had so many customers and the piles grew so big. But the best part of Sunday delivery was in the summer, when you would take us around in the station wagon and the tailgate would be down and you'd let us ride on the tailgate as you slowly cruise through the neighborhood, and we'd jump off with a paper in our hand and run to the front door and hop back on. The car might still be moving, but how about endlessly plucking grass from the myrtle? You taught us how to weed. Or fertilizing the maple trees. You'd put the big poker holes into the ground and we'd fill them up with fertilizer, and the idea was to drive the roots down. Or tapping those maple trees and making maple sugar. We would tap the trees and bucket gallons of maple sugar water and boil them down, and we'd have snow cones with maple sugar, our own maple sugar on it. Or chipping bricks for pennies, endless bricks that you would turn into patios or our sandbox. Or painting the red line that you painted across the sidewalk, that this line you can't go across. Or making the bike port. I remember you mixing the mortar and making that bike port. Very creative, the zigzag pattern. Or speaking of bike port, fixing our bikes. You taught us how to change a tire and how to tune that tire, how to tighten up the spokes and listen to them so that they were all equal. Or I remember you bending iron, making those rails and actually welding them up. That was pretty darn incredible, Dad. And you taught us to use tools, how to use a level, a hammer, a cat's paw. Who knows what a cat's paw is? Power saw. You taught us what a Phillips screwdriver was and the difference between a monkey wrench and a pipe wrench. You taught us how to properly load a wheelbarrow and how to cut glass and how to glaze a window. I can still hear your voice explaining the nuances of how to use a handsaw. Nice and easy, power only on the downstroke. Watch the line, not the saw. It served me well. Well, you know, Dad, at first I didn't think I'd have very many memories. Once I got going, one led to the other, and I think I could just keep going on and on. And thinking back, energetic and creative, like no one else I know. An engineer, a problem solver. You're a man for all seasons. And I'm really lucky, and I hope some of it rubbed off on me. I love you, and happy birthday.